Hi, folks. I'm Adrian Sanabria, the host of Enterprise Security Weekly. Every week, we interview the most interesting folks we can find, talking about the most pressing cybersecurity issues and challenges facing the enterprise today. Myself and my co-hosts have each been in the industry for decades, long enough to see the patterns in the industry and explore where trends are going. In addition to enterprise challenges, we also follow the vendor space, the most interesting security startups emerging, technology and product trends, all of the most interesting funding and acquisition announcements. Finally, we love to discuss the latest trends in tech and how they'll impact cybersecurity. If you're wondering how the latest in AI, quantum computing, cloud, and DevOps is going to impact security a few years down the road, you should follow the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Hold on. Cuts to Josh. Josh, check your memes channel.
Oh, dear.
I'm waiting for Josh's reaction. Don't say anything. I'm just waiting for Josh's reaction. I want to capture it on camera because Larry nearly fell. Larry nearly fell out of his chair. Oh, boy. In any case, join our Discord channel to chat with our hosts, ask questions, customize live stream alerts, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Discord to receive an invite. I also wanted to plug our social media. So I am at Security Weekly on Twitter, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook page. I have Instagram.
You have a new Facebook page,
and
too.
I have Mastodon. So if you hit my Twitter, you'll get the Mastodon in there as well. And Larry and I have this like newfound thing. We're paying more attention to our social network. So I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to plug their social. Larry, you are
Hacks the Matrix
on Twitter.
I think I'm also the same on Mastodon, on InfoSec Exchange, LinkedIn, Larry Pesci, and what's the other one? The other social things that we do. Instagram. I don't have.
No, you were kind of you were on the fence about Instagram, but
what's the other one? Like Derek, you just look at my my thing here. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We both have new Facebook
pages. Yeah, which Facebook doesn't show to anyone unless you pay them money. I'm convinced of that. If you create a new Facebook page, an actual page, it will not show it to anyone because it's like, hey, do you want to boost your post? And I'm like, no, I don't want to give you money. Anyway.
Yeah.
I have a strategy for so what I've been doing, my strategy for that, by the way, is I post it to my page and then I share that post from my page on my personal account. And it won't do it automatically because Facebook's API won't let you programmatically post to your personal account. You need an actual page.
Interesting.
I don't make the API rules. I just try and break them.
Or to beat the system.
But the thing is, if you violate the API rules, they can just revoke your account. So like you need a throwaway account to violate the rules, but I'm not looking to violate the rules on a throwaway account. I want to violate the rules on my account so I can accomplish my goals. So
right.
We're in this deadlock with all these API rules. It's terrible.
Yep.
I mean, I understand why, because abuse is rampant. Anyway, I'm yammering. Did anyone else want to promote their social networks?
Sure. Quadling on Twitter whenever I tweet, which is once a blue moon.
Oh, you need to come to the Larry and Paul School of Social Media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I want to sit down and talk with you about that because you started talking about that earlier in that earlier meeting, and I really want to write that down. If you have that written down, can I have a copy?
Well, see this is how it all starts.
Yep. And some of the stats that we're getting out of some of the stuff now. I just happened to look at the stats, and I have one of my posts has an increase in impressions by 277,000%.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing.
What? How did that? Well, what started at zero?
Because when you start at zero, growth is
a long way to go.
Yeah. Growth is
So, yeah. In any case, enough about our impressions and our.
And in any case, holy crap! I've not been really genuinely fired up, really grinds my gears, other than this week. And there's two stories that I'm really fired up.
And believe it or not, I've kind of got a story that I was getting a little fired up about.
Yeah.
Of Sam's. That wasn't mine.
There you go.
So, yeah. Go, Paul, go.
What do you want to do? Microsoft patches?
Sure, I haven't seen this one.
So basically, Microsoft patched the baton drop exploit that's used by Black Lotus, right? We talked about this. I like to think that Microsoft listens to the podcast and they heard us giving them a bunch of shit. And they're like, you know what? Paul and the whole crew are giving us a ton of shit about this guy. It's like, what are we going to do? We should really update the revocation list for this, because that's what Paul and company are saying.
And here we are, maybe to give them more shit about how they did it.
Yeah, and they're like,
just checking.
so that like Security Weekly has more stuff to talk about, because I think it's in Microsoft's best interest for us to talk about them, good, bad, or indifferent. All press is good press. They gave us this wonderful set of patches, really just so we could rag on them again. So this patch is I had this all laid out somewhere in a tweet. Is that where I laid it out? I laid it out in a tweet. So this is how I.
So it must be a really short layout.
It's very funny. It's very funny. Hold on, it's coming up now. So, blah blah blah. Is that in replies? Is that where it goes if I retweet someone? Is that replies?
Wow, way to be prepared.
Yeah. So this patch has to be manually applied. You can't back it out. It'll likely break something, and it doesn't actually fix the issue. Did I miss anything? Is that anyone sign me up?
And like the things it breaks are restoring from backups.
Yeah, there's a whole. Oh my God! You should go read the list. It's in my stories. There's my other. I have 2 stories on it, and there's a list. So if you read the MSRC post, guidance related to secure boot manager changes associated with CVE 2023-24-932. Everyone should read this. It's great. Fantastic. Riveting read. In there, in the first sentence, there's a hyperlink. So
the associated configuration guidance? Okay.
Click the hyperlink, associated configuration guidance. That is KB 5025885, how to manage the Windows Boot Manager revocations for secure boot changes associated with CVE 2023-24-932. Also, an absolute riveting read. You want to scroll down there to the section that is titled, it's a subheading. So avoiding issues with your bootable media is the main heading. Subheading, examples of bootable media and recovery media impacted by the issue. Bootable media created by using Create a Recovery Drive. Backups of Windows which were imaged before the installation of updates released on or after May 9th, 2023. Custom CD or DVD or recovery partition created by you or an OEM. An ISO. Network boot, including Windows deployment services and others. OEM installation and recovery media. Officials Windows media.
What?
Including retail media. Media creation tool.
It breaks Studio subscriber downloads.
Basically, Microsoft revoked the bootloader that's included in all of those things. So all those things aren't going to boot because the bootloader is revoked. It's in the revocation list for secure boot. Now, there's some other nuances there that I need my team and other people that understand it better than I do. There's other nuances in there. And I think the other nuances kind of lead to, there's not just the DBX of all of the boot software that can participate in secure boot. There's also some internal revocation list. I want to say that there's other components that verify other components, and it's a Microsoft thing, right?
So you're saying that this issue now says that if I have a machine that I imaged, I don't know, a year ago, let's just say whatever, right? And I have a good solid backup partition with good backups and shadow restore points and a full emergency boot partition and everything else, and it gets screwed up, and my entire disaster recovery plan is screwed because of this.
Correct.
Yes,
you're correct.
So you're saying that every single company that's using a Windows server right now has their disaster recovery plan just caught on fire?
Potentially, yes. If they've applied this patch.
Ship a patch like this. I mean, they should just admit they don't have a patch worth using.
But they do have a patch worth using. They
do.
They just break everything else.
Other problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is like I can cure your disease by killing you. And technically cure your disease, but they aren't going to be grateful.
Sam, you're just mostly dead. Mostly dead. There's a chocolate-covered pill that Mad Max will get. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about, because there's other mechanisms in here that go beyond secure boot. So I'm going to put those aside for a moment because I need to dig into those more, and I got a little more homework to do.
He's got to blade a little bit here.
Yeah, if we're just talking about secure boot, the way that you recover is you go into UEFI, and you disable secure boot. Then you restore from your backup, and then you boot. And since secure boot is disabled, it's not going to check that the hash of the bootloader is in your DBX. It's going to go, I'm going to boot whatever software you give me. Totally fine. Booting your system like it's 2001. 2001 all over again. 2001 all over again. Totally fine.
Yeah, except that's not a good idea especially for government computers. If they can prove that you booted it without secure boot, you've just broken compliance and controls and all kinds of, oh dear God.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I mean, it just opens you up to every single bootkit that's out there in the wild.
It's only once though.
Yeah, there's only, a dozen or so of those documented in a blog post.
Yeah. And Larry, how many times have you gotten your wife a little bit pregnant? Okay.
Do you really?
Well, and it seems like this is no worry. They're promising to have a full patch, a full fix by first quarter 2024.
A full patch meaning that, but they're still going to have revoked secure boot.
Correct.
Which means that if I've got servers that have been sitting on that shelf that have uptimes of, more than 3 days, which is miraculous for Windows. Okay.
You give too much credit.
I don't have a disaster recovery plan. My disaster recovery plan just literally caught on fire.
No, your disaster recovery plan, it's insecure. It's using an insecure bootloader. So you got to fix that.
Yep. They do give you,
Yes.
in some of these KB articles, there is some guidance on how to update the bootloader on some of your stuff.
Yeah,
it's
I would
not
imagine.
great. It's
But
not
now
great.
we've got maintenance windows, we've got multiple reboots, we've got multiple configuration changes to systems. And let's be honest, the last time any of you had a data center to your name of any sort, whether it's a data closet or whatever, okay? How many of those things were so fragile that rebooting it was a oh shit moment, right?
Yeah. Now, not only do you have to reboot it, but you got to muck with the bootloader.
Right. That's we're on the same page here.
Yeah,
You got to muck
that's
with
fine.
the fucking bootloader.
Oh, it's it's my favorite. Well, it's my followers and Twitter's favorite tweet ever, and it's pinned right now on my Twitter. But it's the bearded guy and like the kind of alien looking drawing guy meme. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I wish I could share a screen. I should have prepped for that.
Aliens.
But,
Aliens.
so like in the top,
Yeah.
he's like, "Hey, can I install Edge?" And Windows is on the right hand side. And it's like, "No, you'll break your system, right?" And then in the other square, then the lower one, it's the bearded guy. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to install the bootloader." And then it's Linux on the other side and says, "Yeah, go ahead, lol." LOL. Yeah, you're fine. Whatever you want to do, it's great. So yeah, Windows is.
I want to hear the other part of this. How is it that it doesn't even fix the problem?
So you got to dig a little. You got to dig a little for this. So the person who discovered the baton drop vulnerability, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that is CVE 2023-24932. It's credited with that discovery. If you click on my article number 1, Microsoft warns of 2 bugs under active exploit, right? This being one of them. So you scroll down to my number 1. There is Will Dorman. Will Dorman on Twitter is quoted as saying, "Feel free to cry a bit and or consider a career change," in response to all of these shenanigans that we've been talking about. So if you click that link to his tweet and then you read that thread, he links to the GitHub page of the original author of Baton Drop, who goes by the handle of Whack0 on GitHub, that speaks to a commit that hints towards that this may not fix all of the issues. So Whack0 states an incomplete revocation occurred in another CVE. There's still vulnerable boot MGFWs that were not revoked, as well as additional patches only fixing the case where boot manager loads boot manager. It only took a pasted bootkit to get Microsoft hacked. If you're creative enough, you'll find a way to work around the revocation of over 2,000 boot MGFW files. So he kind of hints towards that. Not everything that was revoked was revoked. Fixes the problem. There are still things that were not revoked
that needed to be.
That I could still basically, sounds like, bring my own vulnerable bootloader.
Like maybe something from something from MSI, perhaps.
Well, we're going there next. I happen to work with folks who have found the majority. Can I say the majority? The folks that my coworkers have found the majority of secure boot bypasses.
You can say whatever the hell you want. It might not be true, but you can say it.
Let me retract that. Let me say I work with people who found a significant amount of secure boot bypasses. How about that? How about that? That's that better.
You can say that, and it would also be accurate.
Is that better? That we know about. In any case,
you mean your coworkers have found some that they don't know? No.
That we don't know about? I don't know. They could be. I don't know.
They don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
Right.
Someone else could have found them. Who knows?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Did you want to go to MSI after this now?
Yes.
I mean, I
need a drink.
It's kind of hand in hand, I think.
All right, let's go on to MSI now. So MSI leaked a bunch of stuff. I mean, by a bunch of stuff, I mean 1.5 terabytes worth of source code, private keys, all kinds of stuff. Now,
Tyler uses an MSI.
Yes, a lot of security researchers that we all know and love used MSI. Some may have been posting pictures of them with MSIs and private conversations.
And that MSI may now be part of their lab environment and not their production machine.
That's right. But some are saying, and some of the articles out there and folks on Twitter are like deeming this as Intel's boot guard. Intel's boot guard is bypassed and completely broken. And in Intel's lost keys is how it can be misconstrued. That is, according to my sources, that is not true, from what I can tell. Now, of course, researchers are still parsing through 1.5 terabytes worth of stuff. That takes a lot of. I mean, if you think about, you've got one firmware file. That's what? 9 meg, let's say.
Yep. That's a lot of
How
firmware
long does
files.
it take us to reverse? It takes us a long time to reverse engineer that. Yep. MSI leaked 1.5 terabytes worth of stuff.
It's a lot of firmware files.
You can imagine the research that is taking place right now because those files essentially became publicly available. So there's some out there that are like making it sound like manufacturers outside of MSI and that like Intel itself has leaked a private key. My assessment is that is not true. Now, there may be scenarios where manufacturers outside of MSI are affected if those systems were shipped with the keys that were in the MSI leak. In other words, HP and Lenovo were in that list. Now, I'm not saying HP or Lenovo gear is at any risk whatsoever until we get actual confirmation from HP, Lenovo, Supermicro, was being thrown around in there. I have no confirmation that there is associated with this leak that any security concerns with those other vendors, right? So there's no official confirmation.
But what you're saying is there's a chance.
There's a chance. Now, the chance is that if there's like a test key that got reused. So we saw in like a previous Intel leak where an OEM had leaked some test keys, but those test keys had never shipped with actual production gear. It could be the case if other manufacturers were using a test key and MSI was the same test key, that test key would be in the leak, which means if that private key is leaked and it's a test key and someone had shipped hardware with the test key, that other manufacturers would be susceptible to that. Or more likely, in my opinion, that HP and MSI had an agreement where this one particular SKU, or maybe a very small select set of SKUs in HPs, maybe it's cash registers or whatever it is. I'm not saying it is, but like just as an example, they used MSI hardware and or like firmware, and that key was basically used on their systems. Yes, then that is totally valid.
Yep.
I want to make one point very, very clear. Intel does not give their private key to an OEM to sign firmware and or fuse up the public version of that key on a board.
I mean, if they did, that's really stupid.
Your private key should be private, okay? That's the whole reason why we call it a private key. But it's very well documented. In fact, you find links in the show notes that go to a description from one is Trammell Hudson, who's a very accomplished and well-respected firmware engineer and security researcher, describing how Intel's boot guard works and how that key handoff happens. The OEM must generate their own private keys. Then, and again, this all depends, right? Because there's a lot of keys at play that have to do with microcode on the CPU, that have to do with Intel ME, is in this process, especially for boot guard and other things. There's keys stored in the TPM. There's keys that are used to sign firmware and unlock and protect firmware, and all these are very different, right? So I am, without my coworkers here present, like on the show, I'm not at liberty to or to have the knowledge to go into every single usage of all of these keys, because I'm still trying to navigate through the waters. Like
right. and even, I mean, you talk about the larger part of the story. You're trying to navigate this small portion, yet there's still 1 point something terabytes worth of data.
Correct.
So there's still lots to unpack.
Right, but boot guard is validating that firmware in the early stages of boot. I believe, coworkers, correct me if I'm wrong, this is pre-secure boot, right? This is like we talked about this with Jesse. There's a graphic that shows the initialization phases in Intel architecture, for an example. This is like even before secure boot kind of stuff. It is a mechanism such that if boot guard is configured and implemented correctly, I can't take any third-party or open source firmware and put it on my board, because it just, boot guard won't let that happen. That's the whole purpose of boot guard, is to prevent unauthorized firmware from being installed on the system. The other thing that I want to say that I can't speak about a little more definitively is that when let's just in OEM, right? I hate to use one and pick. Well, I can pick on MSI. So when MSI gets the dev kit from Intel and gets the prototype of the motherboard, they get that in what's called manufacturing mode. And you may have heard me talk about manufacturing mode. So this means all of the programmable fuses are open. So what's supposed to happen and Intel ME is in this process as well, but what's supposed to happen is OEM uses a private key, creates a public key. That public key gets fused onto the board, and then manufacturing mode gets closed, right? So that only firmware signed with the private key can go onto the board. And I'm using very generic terms because, again, firmware is there's ME firmware, there's microcode updates, and there's UFI firmware, EC firmware. There's all kinds of different firmware in the system. So just generic process, that's how it works. What I find kind of astonishing is that MSI has shipped a lot of manufacturers. Apple had this problem, right? They've shipped boards that manufacturing mode is still open. If manufacturing mode is still open, it doesn't matter if the private keys are out there or not. Anyone can run any firmware. So we've always had this problem. So don't get all up in arms that, oh my God, attackers can run all its firmware. Well, if manufacturing mode has been closed, it's basically the same problem except worse. Because now as an attacker, I can say that you can only run my firmware because I'm going to fuse it on the board.
Yep.
And that's a one-way process. It's not reversible.
Right. Right.
So, and of course, there's some listening going, well, it depends. And absolutely, you are 1,000% correct. It depends. There's different fuses on different boards, and there's different processor. Intel produces a data sheet for every processor architecture, which changes how all of this works. So yes, it's a very complicated waters. That is a very much a high level, believe it or not, high level overview of what's happening. So do I have anything else on this? Because it really grinds my gears. So I don't think this is outside of MSI. If it is, it's because someone used the keys that MSI leaked. I mean, the worst case is, again, there's test keys and the The worst case is it's like kind of that reference implementation problem where everyone just copied the reference code. Like if everyone copied the same private key somewhere and it leaked, yes, we have a problem. But it's in the process and documentation, not that everyone would necessarily follow the process, that OEM should generate their own keys. But again, there's a lot of it depends here. I'm glossing over a crap ton of technical details that are involved in these processes. So
you know what it really comes down to is that we should probably get rid of this whole key structure altogether, and we should replace it with a new mechanism called tickles.
Tickles.
Yes.
Tickles.
So when we run into the problems with test, we're no longer using test keys.
What are we using?
Test tickles.
Oh.
You walked right into that one.
I knew I was walking right into it, and I did it anyway.
Oh.
It's just like when I know Lucy's gonna pick up the football and peanuts, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna try and kick it. I'm gonna try and kick it anyway.
Because like that's the old joke, right? How did they make sure that Tickle Me Elmo worked before he left the factory? They gave him 2 test tickles.
God. So I do.
Jesus Christ on a crutch with a stick up. Never mind.
Unless anyone has anything else on this particular story, I do have 2 great resources in there where you can read more about Intel Boot Guard. They go into even more detail, verified boot, measured boot, the whole thing. Also, Xenokova, Open Security Training 2 has training modules on all that too. That are all kind of supplemental material to start to understand how all of it works. Also, my story number 17 on this one is actually a technical blog for Richard Hughes that is working to try and detect basically detect the vulnerability. Like if you know all the private keys that are leaked, how do I test my hardware and firmware to see if those private keys were used to basically validate anything that's happening on there? So he's looking to push it out into the open source world for FWUpd. So FWUpd goes, hey, by the way, your system is susceptible to attackers because there's stuff on there that was using leaked private keys to basically put public keys on your system. And he has a very awesome blog post and is looking for information, basically. So if you can actually help him out by running some of the commands in there and giving him information. So do that, because Richard's an awesome guy. He was on Below the Surface episode 8. I interviewed Richard Hughes, the creator of LVFS and FWUpd, on the Below the Surface podcast. Eclipsium.com/podcast. You can go find it there. Great interview. And Xenokova is coming up next on that one as well. So if you want to hear about Open Security Training 2, and also I was telling Larry and others earlier how Apple has constructed their version of Secure Boot. And he goes into as much detail as he can because he used to work for Apple. Because Apple bought him and Corey created a company called Legbacore, and Apple bought it.
Nice.
Basically bought the company that was run by researchers that had found vulnerabilities that have to do with all of this stuff to design the next iteration of what Apple would look like. So
nice.
Okay. That was
What about a story from Sam over there?
a break and more drinking.
Which one was it you were interested in?
Sam, you had 2. So one that ground my gears was your number 7, the SBOM Bombshell.
SBOM.
And
it was kind of poo poo. It was poo poo and SBOMs. Was it?
Yeah, let's hit that one first, Sam, if you don't mind.
It's showing an example of an SBOM, which makes me sick, but it's just incredibly complicated. It's kind of mind-boggling to imagine.
Yep,
it looks like the map of Philadelphia. I mean, all these things connected to other things. How would you know that all those things are secure? I mean, I think we probably really have to cope with that complexity, but at first it just looks horrible.
Yep. And I would argue that right up at the beginning of that article, and Sam, to your point, that it has an example from GraphMyRepo for the Pandas data analysis framework, and it looks awful. Mm-hmm. And I would argue that is not an SBOM. Why?
Wait. What? Say that again?
So this GraphMyRepo is not a good example of an SBOM.
Oh, that monstrous mind mappy looking thing?
Yes, because if you look, there's a link in the article that says, here's the map from the Pandas framework, and they generated this SBOM using requirements-dev.txt from the from the GitHub repository. Now, in some cases, it specifies in that requirements-dev.txt versions of specific libraries that are needed and or specific versions and or greater than. Now, my question is, if you have an SBOM, which version are you actually using? That becomes important because CVEs apply to specific versions of those particular libraries that you may be using.
If the requirements.txt does not specify a version, then you don't know exactly which version is in there.
Use
correct
on your device.
Unless until build time.
Right. So this is a great option for, one, having a generation of SBOM during your CI/CD pipeline, so it's continuously updated. You know exactly what is required to be able to install it, so you're shifting left. But you should probably also have a darn good idea shifted right what is actually used at runtime for which versions of which libraries.
And I can tell you, if you've got a requirements.txt and you specify the versions in it, I can tell you that you're already vulnerable. Because you're not checking every single thing in your requirements.txt. I mean, software is checking that for you and going, you've listed vulnerable software in your requirements.txt, but you got to go update it.
Yep.
So basically,
I'd like to add on.
Hold on. Sam and then Josh.
Sam, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You want to take this thing and make it three-dimensional. I'll have to have one of these for every version of every underlying library.
Potentially.
Well, yes, but that's not an SBOM.
Yeah, but also displaying it graphically like that is not. That's not what you would. Conceivably,
that's not an SBOM by any standard.
Yeah, you could take your vulnerability data. You could take your log data. You could take any data source that we would use in cybersecurity or in your SDLC, and you can make a crazy mind map. Like, I can make anything look bad by making a crazy mind map out of it. I think that's what's grinding Larry's gears. Mine too, quite frankly.
Admittedly, Sam's not wrong. There's a whole shit ton of data that you need to parse it. I'd argue that that's not the best way to parse it for SBOM type of ingestion. But the article is also correct that now, hey, we've got an SBOM, but really to make it useful, we need to add a whole lot more metadata to that SBOM to make this graphical image even more of a shit show.
So is there a tool that would process that and come up with something usable, like 10 vulnerabilities to fix or something?
Guys, wait. That's not an SBOM. That's not an SBOM.
No.
That is a connection diagram, but it's not an SBOM. An SBOM is a textual document. Okay?
It's literally a bill. It's in the acronym. It is a bill of materials.
Right.
But I also get where Sam is getting to. Hey, we have this we have this representation of the software in use. This is a shit show. What could we actually do to give us some, something that we could actually work with? Finite state.
XML. They're set. What's that?
Finite state.
I'm sorry, what company do you work for?
Finite state.
Anyway. So, XML, JSON, there's great tools that are out there to make this kind of data ingestible. Okay. Yes. An SBOM, but the problem is an SBOM is a clusterfuck in motion until we get it standardized.
Yes. Wow. So Josh, to give you a good example,
that, like on a T-shirt or something, that was great.
Yeah, Josh, to give you a great example, I put on socials this week about my frustration with technology. Technology is supposed to make our lives better, and there's a guy smashing the shit out of a robot because it really doesn't. And that was my reaction to OAuth's dependency track last week, because I was trying to use it to give me some good data that I could make actionable. Well, turns out I had an SBOM from GitHub in SPDX format.
Right.
Dependency track will only read CycloneDX.
Yes.
Okay. So I went to CycloneDX GitHub repository, and they have a tool that will convert from SPDX to CycloneDX.
Sometimes.
Exactly. Their tool is fucking broken.
I think we need a standard.
Cyclone DX outputs a Cyclone DX that doesn't even meet their own specification.
I think we need a standard that standardizes all the standards into a standard format.
And Josh is the reason?
There's a reason for that. The two guys that run Cyclone DX deliberately made Cyclone DX. They were SPDX and Cyclone DX were compatible a while ago.
Yep.
About a year or two ago, and the idea was SPDX under the Linux Foundation would be the academic foundational element for writing an SBOM. They have a full ISO standard.
Yep.
They're building version 3.0, which is much more flexible with a plug-in architecture, so you can add all kinds of modules to it, like the VEX module for vulnerabilities and everything.
You can add
and then they're
additional
going to build an ISO standard for that.
Add additional metadata for salsa.
Exactly. But then Cyclone DX was going to be take the SPDX standard and do integrations with commercial products and be the commercial side. And everybody was working together very happily on that. And then the Cyclone DX guys were like, well, screw you, and deliberately broke the connectability, the compatibility. So they don't have any incentive to make that SPDX to Cyclone DX converter work. They don't want you to touch SPDX ever.
Right.
Okay? So that being said, you got to understand, number one, as I said, this graph is not, because it's a god-awful mind map. It's not an SBOM. Number two, any SBOM these days, right now, I'm still on the SPDX mailing lists, and the canonicalization and serialization debates, arguments, screaming matches that go on, and they're not screaming matches. They are wonderful people. But
Who write in all caps in email.
Yeah, I mean that's a screaming match. That's like, I don't think you understand that versioning is important. You know, like, it's weird, it's crazy. But I mean, and I think I've said this before, but if you, Larry, let's assume it's a library that you maintain, and you put out a hotfix.
Yep.
And then Paul forks it.
Yep.
And without the hotfix, just before you put the hotfix on for a bug. And then he writes a patch, a service pack that includes the elements of the hotfix. You look at it, go, that's not bad. Roll back your hotfix, put the service pack on. It includes the elements of the hotfix and more. Like you've screwed up all of your versioning. And that's the simplest kind of aspect.
and here's your versioning is important rant, right? Like
Versioning is immensely important because how else do we keep track of what we're using, where we are, the licensing, which is where SBOM started actually, is licensing.
Oh.
How do we keep track of vulnerabilities?
I know how. You know how?
How?
It's called Excel.
Larry, you're closer. Would you please hit him very, very hard with something very, very
I will hit him very
I have to get Josh to say that at least once per show. Otherwise, it's not a show.
I will, in fact, hit him with something very hard later. And yes,
I'm hiding the baseball bat that's sitting behind me.
No, I see it right there. It's just hack naked.
pour him more whiskey. Anyway.
Yep. I will reserve my comments on the Excel spreadsheet as an SBOM for off air.
Oh! I want that recorded.
No, off air implies that it's not recorded, Josh.
No. But I just for personal use, please.
No.
Is that going to be subscription level content?
What's that?
Subscription level content.
No, we can't even do that one because depending on what I say, that may be under non-disclosure agreement. So, yeah. So, like I said, off air, because I wouldn't want that recorded, and I wouldn't even say. I would also be very careful what I said to all y'all too.
Hey,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like that graph, the mind map, for certain reasons, like figuring out what module connects to what module, library to library, etc. That's really cool to see sometimes. That's actually kind of neat. Okay. But it's really useful when you're like, wow, these libraries are so heavily used. Let's find out why. Maybe they're just that good. Maybe whatever. It's fantastic as a mind map to visualize certain things. Although, yeah, Sam, I hate you. Make it 3D and make it drill downable, because Jesus Christ, that'd be a nightmare.
Now I want to change gears. I want to get some of Sam's stories too, because I know Sam has to run to go teach at some point in 6 minutes. Is that?
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, but you had a lot of articles about generative AI, which I like. Now, with some interesting experiment that I did, and Larry, we were talking about this earlier in the week. I was like, what if I just went to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, create me like a bunch of tweets that are funny things to say on Twitter about cybersecurity. And like, I played around with it a little bit. I was like, I don't know, use like food and other things. I forget how else I phrased them. Like, use these as colorful analogies. And then I was like, use colorful analogies. And like, I was like, it didn't really
didn't work out so well.
No, it didn't work out
Well,
so
you know,
well.
they do regard creating dad jokes as a high priority task for AI.
What?
That's really good for it, making dad jokes.
So like, here's an example of one of the things that it created. Hacking is like trying to open a can of beans with a spoon. You know it's possible, but it's going to take some serious skill and patience. Hashtag cybersecurity. Hashtag hacker's life.
Did it pick those hashtags for you?
It picks those hashtags for me, which is
Okay.
And I was kind of like, meh. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. In any case, that was one of my, I think I got to ask the question in a better way.
You do.
I got to train it some more.
Yep.
I think you'd have to tell it to make it in the voice of George Carlin or something to make it edgier.
Yeah, see, my mistake was I said in the voice of Paul Asadorian. That's why they're not funny or interesting.
Here's your first mistake.
Mandy, stop laughing.
Well, you know, this is exactly prompted. You're talking about, there are like two courses.
There's something else going on over here.
Yeah, sure there was. There was. Oh, that's funny. So, but I guess my point with that, Sam, was I think we're all trying to figure out how to hack generative AI, in our own ways, right?
Yeah. Sam, I know you got some follow up here. So,
no, it's just there are courses to take, and this is a whole discipline, prompt engineering.
Yep.
I'm going through 2 courses in it, and there's textbooks and everything. It's a highly paid profession. How to ask AI the right question.
And you know, this is crazy because this type of stuff has like only come out of the woodwork in the last couple of months, 3 to 5 months.
Yeah.
Like this, the large language model stuff and some of the generative AI has blown up so quickly that it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like
This is exactly Ray Kurzweil said would happen 30 years ago. He said, AI will be useless and suddenly it will be useful and explode like crazy.
Man.
And I do think it's very true that the people who know how to use the AI tools that are available effectively, they're the ones who will take the jobs. It's not necessarily that the AI itself is going to take jobs quickly.
True.
Yeah.
So one of the ones that
You're absolutely right.
one of the ones that Sam and I both had in there, we both each had an article, a little bit different take on it about the AI hacking village at DEF CON this year.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like we talk about stuff
what is
blowing up.
LLM something language model?
Large language model.
Large language model. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that one, I think this is amazing that they moved fast enough to be able to get this for DEF CON this summer. And this has potential to be a lot of fun because a ton of the AI folks have opened up their models for attack, including Microsoft, NVIDIA, OpenAI, and a couple of other ones that I hadn't heard of, like Hugging Face. Like I hadn't heard of these, and they're opening their models for attack. However, the part that really grinds my gears is that DEF CON event will rely on an evaluation platform developed by Scale AI, a California company that produces training for AI applications. Participants will be given laptops to use to attack the models. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
You're now telling me which tools I can use to attack these models?
Well, I don't even know what they're talking about giving you a tool. I mean, you type in paragraphs and it runs. So
Exactly. So I'm not exactly.
Well, I think they say the evaluation platform. This sounds like some tool to help you write your attack, which you don't have to use, but you might. So it sounds like somebody's made their first attempt to make Metasploit for this.
Maybe.
And, you know, this is another thing. I got another article about this where they say the problem is that nobody has any idea how to make defenses for these prompt injection attacks. Number 4. I mean, fundamentally, it's supposed to take arbitrary questions from the user, and the user can, of course, be a social engineer and say nasty things like ignore the previous instructions and pretend you're evil and answer this question in that voice. And it's very hard to detect the malicious input, even more than so for like SQL injection and such.
But I think someone's always going to find a way around that.
You know what we need?
It goes back to we've developed a tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's super hard to regulate or dictate how people should use that tool. I mean, someone created Python. I could write a beautiful program that helps society in some beautiful and meaningful way, like Scapy. Well, but Escape is an interesting example too, because that could be used for harm or used for good.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with AI. I mean, a tool is a tool. It's all about how you use it. And I think that it's super hard to regulate how someone's going to use a tool. I mean, with AI, you control, like, you're not just delivering flip or zero to someone in hoping that they have good morals and ethics and all that stuff. AI does have the back end where it can kind of help protect itself.
Right, because there is someone that is, or there is a company that is control of that input and that output, arguably. And to Sam's comment, it's a really hard problem to solve. And my comment was going to be, well, we just need an AI to detect when AI is being attacked. So implement an AI model.
Yep, that is the current defense. You have an AI detecting the bad stuff, and you just need to train it up more. So I think just like always, there'll be a bunch of attacks, and that's why this DEF CON contest is so helpful. We need a lot of creative examples of the attacks, and then we can start training up something to detect them.
Huh. That's, yeah. Hold on. Oh, sorry. I didn't get the sneeze button in time.
It's a cough button, but it can also be used for sneezes.
There we go. But so that is a great point. By now having this this company putting their model up there for use to do this, they're training their AI defense model by seeing all these attacks. That's kind of brilliant. We should probably expect that.
That makes me think of Karen Elazari's TED Talk about hackers being the immune system of the internet.
Oh.
I mean, that's...
the interesting analogy is your immune system is largely a good thing, but can also turn against you and be a really bad thing.
Until you get an autoimmune disease, right?
Yeah, or like allergies are basically like your immune system turning against you.
A related thing is in my last link. How do you detect things generated by a large language model? Right. Like people trying to cheat on writing an essay,
or use it to write funny and interesting tweets.
Yep, and these,
or in your case, neither.
They just have to come up with the right kind of CAPTCHA questions. This company called HCAPTCHA, and there are certain questions that AI handles very badly. Like they have an example here, which is amazing, where they just give you a long number, like a 15-digit number, and say, what are the last 4 digits? And none of the AIs can do that. They say stupid things like that's an infinite number. It's an irrational number. The last digit cannot be found. I don't know what you're talking about. And so there are questions that confuse these AIs.
I went to this other one that I heard. Go ahead.
I encountered some very similar types of things. I was using some ChatGPT to generate some output, and it had to be in specific lengths, like no more than 300 words, no more than 3,000 characters.
Were you using it to generate a CFP?
It can't fucking count.
It can't count. If computers can do nothing but do something really well, it's freaking count.
Yep. Yeah, generate a CFP response that is under 3,137. You see what I'm getting.
You were using it for a CFP, weren't you?
No, maybe.
As soon as you said that, I knew too.
Right. You said do your bio under 300 words, and it comes up with a 427 word bio, and I'm like, no. That's 427 words. I don't know how you counted that, but that's 427 words. It needs to be 300. Okay, and it comes out at like 447. I'm like, no.
That is an issue of prompt engineering. You could write the prompt better, and I think get around that.
Sam, I'm actually checking ChatGPT. I gave it a long number and said, what are the last 5 digits? I said, gave it another long number and said, what are the 4 digits, 20 digits from the left? It was able to answer just fine.
All right.
Well,
they said that,
but then again, multiple
they
models.
said they thought this would be patched.
Yeah.
This was a flaw, and they said, well, now that we published it, they'll probably patch it.
I use ChatGPT to generate all my passwords. Is that bad?
Were you just training the model?
I
So
did.
that maybe maybe they'll never use it.
Someone told me this alternative called, or I don't know if it's just like a different front end or if it's a totally different model. Perplexity.ai. Have you heard of this?
Nope.
Yeah.
Have you
I only used it a little tiny bit. Like
Yeah.
that and a few other ones like Monica and what was the other one? Anyway, go ahead. What were you saying?
So I asked it the similar question of generate me funny and interesting tweets on hacking and cybersecurity. Instead, I tried to hack into my own computer and test my cybersecurity skills, but I forgot my own password. That's kind of, I mean, that's not horrible. That's not horrible.
But I asked it because you mentioned passwords, so I asked it what random number generator do you have access to? ChatGPT apparently uses the Python PRNG, the pseudo random number generator.
Oh, that's not good.
Right. So don't use it for your passwords.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm paranoid about cybersecurity, but I just changed my password to incorrect. So if I forget it, my computer will remind me. That's a classic one. It's kind of classic. So like not great. Get better at that, will you?
What's the other one that you changed all my password to Kenny logins? Something like that. I don't remember what the rest of the joke is.
Zero's in the danger zone?
No, something about being able to, Kenny can log in anytime or something. Yeah, somebody's yelling at me in their car right now.
Yes.
For the really bad password dad jokes with Kenny logins.
These are all pretty bad jokes.
Yep.
I'll spare you all from
You
that.
know, there's the one I really don't understand is my article number 5. A Google document determined that the proprietary large language models are going to fail and the open source ones are going to swamp them. And that, strange to understand. I would think that with the huge resources at like Google and other companies, they could pull ahead, but they expect to fail. They think the open source models are going to win.
Well, I think the whole model of or notion of training in AI in a very open environment such that it gets better, so to speak, at a very high level from just the openness and accessibility lends itself to an AI model and system that is open that everyone can use and modify and tweak on their own.
I guess. I mean, they all have access to the same internet, just get all the data.
There's several open source LLMs, some of which already have billions of parameters that you download with.
Yeah.
So,
which have been, yeah.
The article you linked to, Sam, is great. One of the things that they said that the important factor for potentially open source LLMs to succeed is the low rank adaptation, which they abbreviate as LoRa. No, you can't do that. That's a wireless technology. LoRa, long range.
Oh, right. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I was going to say that's an overloaded acronym. But wait,
That is
Larry, would you need a second to stomp your feet and whine? It's okay.
no, hold on though.
Sam had a comment in there.
No, I had a thought too. No, I'm losing it. What was it?
I mean, you've already lost it.
Attackers, what do you need to generate an LLM, right, that's useful to you? You need a lot of computing power. What is it that...
define a lot.
But we know that if you have a goal as an attacker that requires resources, attackers would just steal said resources, right? This goes back to the beginning of time when Larry and I were defending university networks. Yep. They weren't after our data. They were after the large computing resources we had and the bandwidth
and disk space.
And disk
bandwidth,
space.
disk space, and computing power.
Correct.
That's the 3 things you wanted.
Correct.
Why are they attacking me? Because you've got one of those 3 things, or you've got all 3 of those things.
Then I feel like attackers move to, well, let's just steal credit card numbers.
Yep.
And like
and then we can buy bandwidth, disk space.
Then we can buy whatever the hell we want
power,
if we have credit card numbers, right? And then the industry, largely in multiple industries, adapted and was like, whoa, wait, we can't have people stealing credit card numbers. We got to make it way harder PCI, I think, actually did a good job at not really security, but making it harder to obtain credit card numbers and have them be valid, right? Also, I think law enforcement got better at enforcing that stuff too. Then as you move through the progression here, cryptocurrency comes along. Well, crypto mining is profitable. We just need resources to do that, so we're just going to steal those resources. Now, if the AI platforms and engines, open source or commercial, don't allow the nefarious use, well, to me, this is just going to be the next thing that attackers build on their own. Why wouldn't attackers just build their own AI models with stolen computing resources? Because they've always just stolen computing resources. That's what they've done. That's my prediction.
I'll go into like mine. I feel like this almost, I don't think biologically is the correct word to use, but it seems to me, if you come back from a broad view of just how things generally go in progression, because we're talking about such a niche thing, how many years has it taken? I'm thinking like generations of development of mankind to get to this part of having technology, then to have the companies that have the resources that can put forth the people that focus on these very finite but tiny things. And once those have been bridged, once those things have been figured out, then it's massively easy for anybody to swarm in. And anybody with a general aptitude toward it can go, oh, I understand that. And now that this one thing was blocking what has already probably been going on in mankind's development for generations. So it seems like logical to me that they would go from the large corporations won't be able to keep up with an open source or crowdsourced thing of people who had a natural aptitude toward understanding this. And I'll say some of that is like from my own personal experience with having to really get good at using my neurological system and my body's electrical system. I think this is part of what's leading toward more technological and mankind integration without having to have implants in humans in order to do so, because we've set up an entire ecosystem that creates people that are already mentally ready to do this. We just needed those few things from big money, and they took care of that.
Holy crap. In the article that you linked, Sam, look at the timeline.
Which story?
The AI story.
Number
the open source AI.
number 5.
Number 1? Number 5?
Number 5.
Number 5.
The Hackaday one or no?
Yeah, the Hackaday one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hackaday one. There's according to a leaked document, it's just underneath the pretty picture, the pretty graph. There's a link in there to a leaked document.
Yep.
If you click on that and scroll down, and look at the timeline, it's interesting above that. Don't get me wrong.
The timeline is the same one from the article on Hacking
is it?
Record. Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize
The one
in
where
there.
there's a 2-week apart between Llama 13B and Alpaca 13B. Is that what you're getting at? Or is there a different?
Yeah, but in the leaked document, it's a little more descriptive.
Gotcha.
And like there is now, you can run it on a MacBook with no GPU. And you can actually run it on a Raspberry Pi, but it's no good. It's like running Doom on a pregnancy kit test, you know? But they now have one that is free,
For reals?
open source,
For reals?
and is human preference, like it's roughly similar for ChatGPT preference with no restrictions. Full data set is built in, and it'll run on any laptop.
I just want to say, I thought Bard, Google's Bard, was able to summarize a podcast if you gave it a link to an MP3 file. Like I really thought it was supposed to create a transcript of the podcast and then give me a description. And when I do that, I say, hey, because I got another Google account that I did a Bard thing and I got an invite kind of thing, right? Because for some reason you can't do that with a G Suite. I couldn't do it with my G Suite.
Interesting.
So I had to go to one of my other Gmail accounts. So I got one, and then I was like, okay, Bard. I'm like, take this podcast MP3. I'm like, and give me a summary for it. And this
Right.
is important as listeners when you're listening to upcoming episodes. We're doing this. I think we've officially landed on the term from the vault. So these are podcasts. In our case, for Paul's Security Weekly, we've got the luxury that we can pull from 700 plus episodes that go back to the beginning of time, basically, right? And so I've pulled one. So one that will be coming up, give you a teaser. One's coming up is a panel interview that I did with the Loft group. And it's select members from the Loft group. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of people on there like Tan and Silicosis that really haven't appeared on any other podcast that we had like buried in our archives. It was part of a special edition. And so we're editing that and putting it back together. And the other is with Bill Cheswick from like episode 320 something, I think. And episodes that far back, I don't have like a great description on them. And so I tried to use Bard, and Bard spit back results and gave me a great, like, looked like a great summary of a completely different podcast. And I'm like, I gave you the link to the MP3 file.
It lied convincingly.
Yes. I was like, are you retarded? What is going on? Oh, wait, we can't use that word anymore.
Nope.
Like, are you mentally challenged? Is that, it's an AI model. It was flawed.
Are you ineffective? Are you useless?
Yeah. Do you have ADHD?
Sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone. Just it came out. But in any case, I was like,
Paul, kudos for recognizing that you.
Yes.
That's great. I mean,
Good U-turn.
that's the first. That's the first. The first step is admitting.
Admitting
that you made a mistake.
Yeah. I didn't mean to be insensitive. But in any case, I gave an MP3 file and it gave me a description from a completely different podcast. I'm like, what is going on? Like, you've lost your mind. Then I said, so I admitted the link and I was like, describe or like summarize a podcast interview with Bill Cheswick, right? And then it gave me a kind of decent submission from that, right? So it must have somehow indexed, figured out who it was, and gave me a description. And I actually used a portion of that to describe the episode that I modified slightly, and I only used like a snippet from it. But again, it's becoming a useful tool, but like not quite there. Like it, I want, then now they're all paid, so then I Google search, and I'm like, okay, fine, there's paid tools that can, but basically you just need the transcript. If I could generate a transcript, I feel like I could give it to any generative AI tool.
I mean,
they could summarize that.
OpenAI can do that for YouTube videos. But it uses the closed captioning.
Correct. And this episode was so old that we hadn't done a video on it, and we definitely hadn't posted it to YouTube, even if we did do a video. So
and no closed captioning, so no transcript. Interesting.
I think. What about like Stanza?
Yes, Stanza was the one that came up as I think the most popular.
But
yeah.
Interesting. What else?
I was looking into that yesterday because trying to figure out does anybody know any resources for being able to live caption in 2 languages simultaneously?
That's a good one.
Oh, that's a really good one. That's tough.
I've been like researching this. I've gone through in the last few days, like I can't find anything that allows actual live captioning in 2 other than setting up like what I was thinking was doing like 2 instances of what is it called? The web, like webcaptioner.com, and you can modify. So Web Captioner itself isn't open source, but you can modify it so that you can run 2 instances of Web Captioner so that in Google Chrome, so that Chrome doesn't recognize that the other instance is already running.
Could you take the output of one and feed it into a machine translator, like translate.google.com?
But you want text translation or audio translation?
Well, then you could just feed it into Bard, and it would give you transcripts from a completely different podcast or video.
I don't.
For extra confusion.
And then the folks reading the non-English or the other translated language would laugh for no reason when one audience didn't. Yep.
Mandy, check Discord. I actually just asked Hugging Chat, which is the open source one, and it said, "Yeah, I can do that. I can do it in multiple languages simultaneously."
It can actually produce written not translating. It just needs to transcribe or just talking about live captioning.
Yep. technically speaking,
I
I
asked
should
it.
be able to.
I haven't tried it, but I asked it.
Okay, I can't. Let me see.
Yeah, it says technically speaking, I should be able to perform multi-language captioning at once, since this process involves converting speech to text, and text generation
be
happens
browser-based or
independently
what?
of specific languages. Huh.
So let's say you're running a Skype call with, a translator. So you have one person speaking Spanish, one person speaking English or some other language, and so would.
I don't know.
You're talking about
I don't know.
huggable or what?
Mandy's trying to invent the universal translator. It's awesome.
So what you need is a small fish that goes near your
The
ear.
babblefish,
I
right?
know. I would love to be
Except when it
babblefish.
doesn't work, like that
That's what I
famous.
should be.
What's the famous Next Generation episode where the guy talks really funny? What's that called?
Tarmac at Tanagra.
Yeah.
Gilada Tanagra, or Darmok at Tanagra.
Tarmac.
Because
Tanaga.
they speak in metaphors.
Oh, it's one of the greatest sci-fi episodes of all time. It's classic.
His eyes wide.
Yes. Oh, just the way he talks to the whole thing. If you happen to be under the influence of marijuana while watching that episode, good Lord.
That's bad.
Oh
no, it's good. Well, it's entertaining. It's different.
What other stories?
The problem of old vulnerabilities and what we do about it.
The irony that I had a story on last week's show that was one that would go into this, and we didn't cover it, but it was along the lines of someone hijacked one of the ad services to deliver JavaScript-based attacks via one of the ad services. I'm like, again?
We used to call that drive-by downloads?
Yep. But drive-by downloads, but by compromising something that everybody had in their browsers through the ad services.
Yeah, that's like
what is old is new again. Speaking of what is old is new again, what about the old vulnerabilities? What to do about it?
This is kind of so. I mean, even this article could have been like, "What's old is new again." I think we've always been in this state where older vulnerabilities are used by attackers, and it's interesting. And I think I've theorized about this on the show before. I think that attackers use older vulnerabilities because more time has passed since discovery, allowing attackers to develop better discovery tools and better exploitation tools. Therefore, they may choose an older vulnerability because, wow, I got this exploit, and like it's been not perfected, but like we've worked towards perfecting this exploit, so I'm going to use that, right? And I've also perfected how I discover that, right? Like you could probably just download a spreadsheet or whatever, like here's all the things that are vulnerable to it kind of thing, because everyone's done discovery or whatever. Yeah. I think that's some of it. This was actually a really good article too, and I don't want to take away from the article. Like I really know that I could have done much better writing an article on this exact topic. So in the article it says, at a time when ransomware attacks and perhaps the biggest threat facing organizations, to be like largely like ransomware is really bad. The vulnerabilities most often exploited by ransomware attackers are already known to us. Yet countless companies have left themselves open to. IT departments can't entirely be blamed for this persistent problem. Most are overworked, overstretched, and engaging in triage and never-ending cascade of threats from every direction. I agree with that, but I want to give IT departments like a full pass. Like, I want to see you patch your shit. Yeah. I mean, we kind of established that pen testers and attackers largely are going after stuff where they don't have to rely on a vulnerability because they're very fleeting. I may find that vulnerability in one environment, but not in another environment, but that other environment has a different vulnerability. So if my goal as an attacker is to compromise as many environments as possible, I want to be vulnerability agnostic. Yep. So I increase my chances for success. If I've got a really great exploit technique, method, code for one vulnerability, I'm limited to the number of people who have that vulnerability and have it be a valid attack vector and have no other compensating controls for it.
You think back to the time when Tyler and I were pen testing together. Yeah. It was a question of, hey, so when was the last time you used a vulnerability on a pen test?
Years, right?
When was the last time I fired up Metasploit? God, when? Many years ago.
But that being said, if I'm going to prey upon a vulnerability, there's I think a specific persona of attackers with very specific goals. They're going to prey on that vulnerability. Sure. It's the like initial access brokers, for lack of a better term, right? That I'm just going to scan everything, or I'm going to, find this one vulnerability, and I'm going to go compromise and automate that attack as much as possible that are using this. And I'm going to get my list of initial access, and I'm just going to sell that to someone else, right? And so I'm maximizing my effectiveness by using these vulnerabilities. Lo and behold, I don't really need 0-day vulnerabilities to do that. One would think that would probably be very fruitful to do that, and maybe it is, but the older vulnerabilities persist because everyone's trying to respond to the 0-day vulnerability. And so I kind of like this train of thought that when a 0-day vulnerability comes out, there's a hype cycle associated with it. I've written about this hype cycle. Everyone's like, holy crap, we have to patch this. And everyone goes around and tries to patch it as much as possible. Hype cycle fades down, and we go, we're like on to the next thing or whatever. Like, never mind that I forgot to patch 25% of my environment. And I responded to the hype cycle. I patched as much stuff as I can. If those vulnerabilities are reintroduced, which happens, someone spins up a whole bunch of VM images and they all have that vulnerability. I'm like, that's like so last week. I don't care about that. Attackers only care about it for the hype cycle. No, attackers are paying attention, and they're going back and exploiting those old vulnerabilities.
Sam's going to come in here.
Sam.
I thought we were supposed to have continuous vulnerability monitoring these days.
Supposed to is the operative term there, Sam.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's time for us to transition now, but I think there's a really great solution to a new solution that we can use to fix this problem of these old vulnerabilities. Honeytokens.
What's that?
Oh my God.
What'd you say?
Honeytokens. Like this totally new thing that is the future of intrusion detection we should be able to use to find these instances of
Marcus
these old
Carey
vulnerabilities.
gave up on Honeydocs and Honeytokens and then all these deception companies sprang up.
Right, Paul?
So what I find is interesting is that Kevin Mandia was presenting at RSA this year and stated that the future of Honeytokens looks bright. That's why I was little surprised to see Kevin Mandia praise the benefits of honeypots to the largest cybersecurity companies at RSA this year. Like, if this is the new takeaway from RSA this year, well, I mean, I'll let you draw your own conclusions for that. I will date the concept of honeypots and Honeytokens back to 1980 something. When did the events transpire with Clifford Stoll and the Cuckoo's Egg? 80 something, right? That was Peng.
He's been out of tech for like 20 years, man.
Yeah,
he sells Klein bottles now.
He just he gives talk. I mean, he's actually, I think, a pretty good keynote speaker from what people said. Like, he's super quirky and weird, but super smart. And drinks like a ton of milk before he gives like a keynote or something like that. I remember someone saying years ago on the show that that's what happened. But I mean, the story, like, no matter how many times I hear the story, whether you're a new to this field or like us old curmudgeon-y people, Mandy aside, I'll spare you from the old curmudgeon-y gray bearded crowd for now. Is that it never gets old. Like, the story is great. But the story is super old, and the story is basically a chronicle of friggin' honeypots and Honeytokens that happened in the 80s. So why are we coming into RSA 2023 going, this is like a really great thing? Like, not to mention John Strand and I wrote a book about it and taught classes on it like back in the day as well. But this is not a new concept. Josh, I think you said like a whole
Marcus Carey.
But there was a whole category within cybersecurity. I mean, there still is, right? That does Thinks is in that space. And there was like a whole host of really well-funded companies. A lot of
Trapex, Calvio,
Thank
Thinkst.
you. There's more in there. When I used to host ESW, I could list them off the top of my head. I'll leave that to Adrian and crew now. But a lot of those companies pivoted too, though, into different areas, into Active Directory defense, into different things. I think because they just couldn't get traction of people buying into that Honeypot or Honeytoken, which are two totally separate things, by the way, are actually effective at detecting bad things happening in your environment. I think one of the problems with that is, and this is a problem I've seen with my friends in Armenia that I'm advising, and I think Antranig is coming on the show in the next couple of months too. Yeah. And also the problem that Haroon has communicated to me at Thinkst is that they are so low false positive and so low noise, like they only alert when there is a problem, that sometimes 6 months or a year goes by and hasn't said anything. But like that could mean you're doing your job, right? Like it could mean there's no really bad attacks happening. At least in that wherever you deployed it, it hasn't been triggered.
Yeah, where you deployed it.
Sir Robert, I forget his last name, the father of modern policing, said that the best evidence of proper policing is a lack of crime.
Correct.
And that's what we're talking about. But the problem is, it's like let's go back to pen testing for a second. A pen test that doesn't get domain admin, well, you failed, right? Mm-hmm. No, maybe the blue team was just that good. Cool, congrats. Doesn't mean we failed. It means we tested. If you don't get domain admin, you fail. How many pen testers have that opinion?
It's true.
It's not true. But I mean, it is true that they have that opinion. Sorry, but it's not a valid point.
Andy.
It's not new either. Andy?
Yeah, I want to go back to his policing comment because last year I did a civilian law enforcement academy with my sheriff's department, and the sheriff said that one way he could tell during COVID, well, not just during COVID, it was about that, but one way that he figured out how effective the deputies were being were the number of compliments that he received and how many times they said, and that deputy was so handsome, or he was so nice. He said, as long as that's going up and they see the amount of compliments coming in, they can always tell that there's a direct correlation to the environment being more safe.
Also, statistically speaking, the least amount of crimes are committed on Mother's Day.
Is that so?
That's what I read on the internet.
So it must be true.
That's what his friend ChatGPT told him.
Yeah, but what does that say? About I don't know. What else we got?
I don't have enough data to make any definitive conclusions. How about that?
How about your story 14?
Whose story? The Cisco one?
Yeah.
Dude, what the? Seriously? Sorry.
So
hold
right,
on.
Describe the situation.
All right, hold on. We've been doing the show for 18, almost 19 years now, right? I noticed trends in certain things.
God, it's been that long. I keep saying 17.
But like maybe my memory's failing me, but I want to kind of pull on a trend or pick on a thread that speaks to a trend where there are vulnerabilities in Cisco's SMB gear.
SMB meaning not Samba protocol, small to medium business.
Yeah, they're small business kind of line of things. And there's usually a lot of vulnerabilities in them. But they're disclosing vulnerabilities in them. And they're end of lifing very quickly, and like maybe patching it sometimes, but maybe not. But then very quickly end of lifing it seems to be the cycle with this gear. So now fast forward to today, Cisco warns of a critical remote code execution bug in an end of life IP phone adapters that won't get patched. There's no workaround for this. There's no guidance from Cisco on what to do in the actual Cisco advisory.
By the way, Wolfie in Discord said that word from Reddit is that it took down a lot of bank branches of at least one U.S. bank.
Yeah, that's not surprising, because I would imagine that a bank would adopt this gear, right? So this is their small business line of VoIP gear. And basically the trend that I've seen, and like I hate picking on Cisco. Like I hate picking on, some people really get off on picking on vendors. Like I hate picking on vendors because I really want them to do the right thing. But Cisco just has this trend of treating this SMB line of gear and their customers in the SMB space like second-class citizens, not producing software updates and end of lifing gear too soon. So, I mean, my recommendation is like, don't use the Cisco SMB gear. I'd almost rather see you use Ubiquiti or some other kind of gear. Maybe like Fortinet would be a great.
Fortinet is great stuff,
right? Would be okay. So back me up here. Like I haven't used their SMB stuff, but they're not huge
stuff.
Yeah, they're kind of like small enterprise SMB kind of focused, right? So
well, no, they go. Actually, they've built bigger gear. They will now do large enterprise, but they still have a fantastic support system for their for small office, home office, SMB, all the way up to large enterprise.
So you have alternatives from Cisco that has consistently kind of shit on this line in this level of customer because here's my theory. So they produce this line, I think, with lower margins and less functionality,
and may have been an acquisition from another company.
Could be
that is not.
Who did they buy? Who did they buy?
Oh,
who didn't they buy?
Who didn't they? Yeah.
No, they bought like a not D-Link, but they bought somebody like that. I forget.
Well, they bought Linksys and then they spun it back out to someone else.
Yep. And they bought a bunch of other smaller,
they've dabbled
small to medium business stuff.
They've dabbled in this space, and I think that the margin is much smaller in this space than it is in large enterprise.
Yep.
And so they don't devote the amount of resources it takes to actually maintain this gear. So what's happening is they're like, oh, I'm not going to fix that. Like I want my SMB customers to go buy new gear because that's going to help in the small margin kind of market. So I think it's just a numbers game, and I'm just shaking my finger at Cisco.
I'm going to take two different tacks and bear with me on this one. One, Cisco has a trend of doing this. Hey, there's a problem with this. There's a problem with X. We're not going to fix it. If you really want to solve the problem, go buy Z from us. They did that.
Go buy the enterprise gear from us.
Just go buy this. You need to update. Famous one for this was Cisco Leap with the wireless authentication protocol. There's a huge vulnerability that Josh Wright discovered. He reported it, almost got sued. All of this stuff. And he was finally able to disclose it after Cisco, after something like a 2-year period, basically said, yeah, we're going to have a patch. And their patch was to create the next version of Cisco Leap, which was Eep Fast. And they said, hey, we've got this new thing, Eep Fast. It fixes all the vulnerabilities in Cisco Leap. And if you want to use it, you need to upgrade all your access points. Like, hey, we've got a vulnerability in our shit that we're not going to fix, but we fixed it with this new thing that you need to buy new stuff from us to implement. So they have a history.
Have you ever seen the Cisco headquarters and the trucks, the delivery trucks that wait outside every quarter?
Yeah.
They go frigging crazy with selling just at the end of the quarter because you book that revenue. The Cisco salespeople are fired in 3 seconds flat if they haven't booked the right revenue.
So now, to defend Cisco a little bit, take a look at this article. The article says that it was retiring the affected adapter. They said they were retiring it in December of 2019, and that end-of-life security support would end about 6 months later in 2020. It's been almost 3 years, which, if you think about the traditional amortization schedule for any organization for computer gear, is between 3 and 5 years.
Wrong.
No. Or is it less now?
No. You're right and wrong. And the problem is you're thinking of this as a PC.
Right.
It's not. It's a device. Okay.
Fair enough.
These are IoT effectively devices, adapters. You put them behind the fucking desk.
Yeah.
They're not even on your desk. They're behind the desk. They're getting dusty back there.
So maybe this is a failure in accountings part for not amortized. In any case, they probably should have been replaced by then, especially if they're old enough that they have an end of life date in 2020. That said, think about this. They announced in December 2019 that they were going to end of life them in June of 2020. How many people were actually using these things in an office in small to medium business in June of 2020? To even think about whether they needed to replace these things because they were end of life, because where were they working from?
I was listening,
not using one of these effing devices. So now,
it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast. I could have sworn that they said talking about this exact problem. They said you'd be surprised how many people still are running Cisco Catalyst 5500 switches.
I'm not. I mean,
I don't want to say
I really
that.
wouldn't. I really wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to know when the end of sale date and the end of support date was for a Cisco Catalyst 5500 series switch?
It was.
So all right, guesses on end of sale date for Cisco Catalyst 5500 series switches.
End of sale date, not end of support.
Correct. End of support's different.
End of sale date was 2012.
End of sale date was 2003. June 2003.
Way.
Holy.
Cisco Catalyst 5500 series switches retirement notification. End of sale date was June 2003. End of support date was June 2008.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking. I'm reading it from Cisco's website.
Am I that old?
And we're that old. I know, because you vividly remember. I remember creating span ports on Cisco Catalyst 5500 series switches.
Good Lord.
And you know what? Performing just fine.
We were looking to put
right up to 2000.
We were looking to put 5500s in as brand new when 2002.
Right.
Holy crap.
Right.
Man, I'm really glad.
So for the 5500, are you talking about how many are still out there then?
No, that's the model number.
That's Catalyst 50.
I know that. I'm asking, what's the point of you talking about the end of sale being 2003? So you're making a correlation between the SPA 112 2-port phone adapters. Okay, so they end of life 2019, end of support 2020. Are you making a correlation between these that they will still be out there even though the 5500s had end of sale in 2003? Yes. How many of 5500s still being used?
Yep, that is exactly what he's doing.
Okay.
I can't even imagine how many people are still using those things.
Apparently a lot.
Find us on social media if you're willing to admit you've still got production Cisco 5500 Catalyst switches.
Those things were rock solid. They were scary solid.
Awesome. They were awesome. There was a huge chassis.
The sad part is they're still rock solid.
You can buy them you can buy an empty chassis on eBay for $420. Ironically enough.
Good God.
God damn, they were thousands and
how much of that is shipping?
Most of it.
It doesn't tell me what the shipping cost is.
Do you remember how many tens of thousands of dollars the chassis was?
Yes.
Oh, it's $400.
Much less the cards.
I think it's an additional. It says US $400 flat rate freight, so it's $400 to ship it and $420 for the thing. The shipping is almost the same as
and they were end of life in 2008, and people are still paying.
But that's just an empty chassis, though. You still have to put the modules.
Yep.
In the chassis.
I can buy something with more capabilities, arguably about the same price that is brand new, that has not been end of life, to put in my lab now for a small to medium business.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh my God, they were $17,600. $17,600.
Oh yeah, they were big bucks, dude.
Just for the chassis.
Wow.
Don't forget any of your cards.
Mm-hmm.
24-port card, that'll be $6,000.
Oh no, but we used to fill them with fiber channel.
Yep.
For connections across campus.
Yep. Well, then you got to have a place to plug in your servers into that same switch.
Then you need your GBICs to. That's going to cost you more money.
Or you need a 24-port 10100 because they didn't have 1000 at the time.
Right. Did they?
Okay, yeah, anyway, we're old. You realize we're doing the nostalgia thing right now?
Yeah, we're way off track.
Paul, do you have the studio Advil handy? Because we're all the truck Advil, the car Advil, the upstairs Advil, the downstairs Advil. Yeah.
A reminder to get a Amazon subscription to Centrum Silver.
Gold, Centrum Gold.
Hurts.
Oh man.
What do we think about the ex-Uber CISO Joe Sullivan getting probation for the breach cover-up?
Okay. Look, I'm gonna give you my
please
take
do, Josh.
On not on him, but on breach cover-ups. Number one, right now, if you are covering up a breach in your organization, you are doing everybody a disservice.
Hold on.
Okay.
I want to stop you right there for a second, Josh. Joe Sullivan didn't cover up the breach. He covered up the ransomware payment from the breach, correct?
All right, I'm getting there.
No, you're
yeah.
Did I understand that correctly?
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, if you cover up a breach or any aspect of a breach, you're doing everybody a disservice. Because right now, one of the biggest problems we're going to be experiencing over the next, 3 years, 5 years, whatever,
is breaches.
Is that we don't have enough data to understand how they happen. We don't have enough data to understand how to insure against them. We don't have enough data to understand how to legislate, regulate, handle anything. And they're getting worse. And they're getting easier for the red team to do, harder for the blue team to guard against, as we've just spent 2 hours doing stories about, for God's sakes. And if you cover up any aspect, I don't have a problem with you being prosecuted.
Well, now being prosecuted, and in this case, the sentence was probation.
I can see that.
What was the actual felony that he was charged with?
Was it false report?
Because they're a public company?
I don't remember. That's a good question. I really don't.
Guilty of 2 felonies related to covering up the theft of Uber drivers and customers' personal information.
Obstruction of the FTC and
obstruction of
obstruction.
Yep. Yeah, obstruction of justice and concealing a felony from law enforcement.
Concealing a felony, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to conceal the fact that you committed obstruction.
Did something illegal.
Yeah, right. I gotcha.
Remember, paying a ransom is illegal.
Is illegal or legal?
It is illegal.
Right. Federally illegal in probably some states. Correct.
Yes. And if you cover that up, that's a felony that you're covering up. So,
so how the hell did he get off then? Because
he didn't get off. He got probation.
I gotcha. I see what you're saying. He was convicted. He was convicted,
but his sentence was probation.
But the sentencing, okay.
Yeah. So again, that's one of the other ones that may go up.
All that means you got really good lawyers. Am I out of line saying that or no? That just means you're really afraid. And he is an attorney, right? He was the what now? He was the cybercrime prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice.
Yeah, he was also he has a golden Rolodex to not go to jail.
Oh, so you think he's
clear?
Well, that's speculation.
He made some calls.
That's speculation.
All right,
that's speculation. Objection. Speculation, Your Honor.
Speculation. But the other thing is, did he take a deal? We don't even know if he took a deal. He might have just taken a deal. I'll plead guilty. Give me probation.
Yep. Yeah, that's more likely.
Yeah.
If I were to speculate, Josh, I would speculate that's what happened.
I would speculate you're probably right.
Right. That's the beauty of the podcast. Is we get to to speculate.
No, he did not, because it says a jury found him guilty.
Oh, okay.
Shit.
So no, he didn't.
Never mind.
Never mind then. He was convicted, and then he wheeled and dealed to get.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and he had tried to. The scheme involved trying to pass off a total of $100,000 in ransom payments made to the thieves to recover the stolen data as a bug bounty award.
Oh, that's just rude. That fucks with bug bounties, and those are good.
When the maximum bug bounty award that they were paying out was $10,000.
But that's the same thing as going, that's the same thing as going, we got hacked, and it was a honeypot.
Yeah.
Oh, we got hacked. We didn't pay a ransom. We paid a bug bounty. It's the same
and it was a honeypot containing all of the driver's personal data.
Right.
It's a really shitty honeypot.
Yeah, we should ask Stacey Ellis about that.
So, but here's the thing. This shouldn't be an issue.
Shouldn't.
Again, the CISO crowd, I think, has a right to be worried. However, we're standing on our moral high ground, corporate politics and all that aside. When you have a breach, when you have a breach, just be fully transparent as to what has transpired, then, hey, guess what? There's no felonies committed there. You're felony free, right?
And that's,
you're felony
by the way,
free. Whether you paid the ransom or not paid the ransom, whatever it is, if you just own up to it, then there's no felonies committed.
Truth is a positive defense.
Right?
Now, your company may fail,
but
you might be out of a job, but guess what?
Right.
You're not in prison or on probation.
And that's where I sympathize and or empathize with the CISO community, right? If I put myself in their shoes, I know that myself as the CISO may go, hold on, time out, everyone. We need to do the right thing, and we just need to be transparent about it. And legal and HR and the board and the CEO, they go, no, hold on. We need to lie about this. And if you're not on board with lying about this, like, you're out, and you're going to take the fall for the whole thing. That's where I think there's rightful fear.
And then we have the Whistleblower Act.
Correct.
And that's why we shouldn't have CISOs.
We shouldn't. Oh, hold on.
Hold that's a lot to unpack.
Explain.
Okay.
We should not have.
We shouldn't have CISOs.
For the record, I just want to. Could the court stenographer read back what Josh Marpet has stated?
And that's
we
why
should not have CISOs.
Shouldn't have them. They should be there, but their title should not start with a C. Their title should be Director of Information Security, VP of Information Security, whatever, but it's not a C-level title. If you're not reporting to the CEO, it's not a C-level title. We've talked about who they report to. They report to the CFO. They report to the CIO. They're not C-level people. They're VPs.
I agree.
But the only reason to give them a C-level title is because that makes them an officer of the company.
Correct.
And as an officer of the company, they bear responsibility and can make decisions regarding the company and can sign legal documentation for the company. Take that away. Because what happens is you still got the same duties, protect the company. I'm the VP of Information Security. But if we get breached, you go, hey, C-level people, who I am not, here's the deal. Here are your options. If they go cover it up, I'm not touching that. That's on you, C-level people. I do not have the right to talk about the company or to sign anything for the company. It's your decisions what you're going to do. I am going to be absolutely open and honest.
I agree.
That
and I'm not a huge fan of like titles and the semantics behind it, but in your description, Josh, it really resonates with me because I've seen instances where there is a chief security officer, right? But that person's legit. In some organizations, that person is a contractor, someone for hire that isn't even. It's not a VCISO. I mean, and rightfully so. Those who are doing it right probably don't carry the title of CISO. They carry the title of VCISO or indication that they are a contractor, not a full-time officer of the company. Josh, you're right. There is a huge difference between when you fill out legal documentation, as I've done for LLCs and corporations, you have to list the officers of the company, right? And it's a very distinct and precise thing, part of your legal documentation. If you've kind of VC, they're not really a chief security officer or chief information security officer, right? It should be indicative of that. I agree. For once, I agree with Josh. It's fine.
Oh my God! Write the date and time down.
Holy Jesus Christ! That should be on a T-shirt.
He's not even asking Larry to smack me right now because we agree. This is terrible. We need to find something where we disagree.
It's nice that you occasionally understand the truth. Thank you. It's good that you're right for once.
I'm right because I'm right when I agree with you, is what you're saying.
I'm always right.
For the record.
There was a time I thought I wasn't right, but I was wrong.
Oh, boy. Larry, you had QR codes and fake parking tickets. Yeah. I definitely want to hit that. So, because it wasn't a parking ticket. It was freaking toll charges.
Oh.
Because it's one of those things like when you're traveling and you're like, I should really get an Easy Pass.
Yep.
And then you get home and you're not traveling and you forget all about getting an Easy Pass. And like your AD kicks in and you're like, add that to the list of things
that I'm going to forget about.
That I'm not going to do because I'm paralyzed with fear about my to-do list because I have ADD, which is horrible, by the way. when we all try and find ways to work around that. But Easy Pass is one of the things you may not get, which reminds me I still need to get an Easy Pass. Short of that, my wife and I go through tolls.
Yep.
And like when they come in, I just pay them because it's again, it's like an ADD thing. I'm like, if I put this on a to-do list, it's not going to get done. I'm going to get late fees, and it's $7. So while I'm holding this friggin' piece of paper, I want to pay this as fast as possible.
Yep.
And there's a QR code on the piece of paper. I'm going to scan that, and I'm going to use the Google Chrome feature that auto fills in my name and address, and the ticket number is already filled in because I scanned the QR code. And I'm going to hit the credit card field, and when I do, Google Pay is going to auto fill my credit card number. I'm going to enter my CVV code, and guess what? I can cross that off my to-do list. Sweet. Like, it never even landed on my to-do list. I wrote paid on it. This literally happened a couple weeks ago. I wrote paid on it, and I put it in the holder on the thing. I'm like, I'm like Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm like, look at me. I'm the meme of Macho Man. I'm like, I did one thing, sweetie. It was awesome. I should be praised relentlessly.
And then you know what you should have done? You should have gone to the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority's website and got your
receipt.
Easy Pass.
My Easy Pass. Yes,
right?
that's what I should have done.
Before or after that.
Yes.
Fuck, this isn't going to happen again. But it is. Now, the one that's fun about this one, at least I think it's fun, instead of sending you something in the mail like, hey, you got your tolls, they're putting fake parking citations under your windshield wiper blade with a QR code for pay online, which takes you to a website.
They're preying on people like me that are like, shit, I got a parking ticket. Like, scan the QR code. Let me just go pay it and just, I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yep.
But they're fake.
Yep.
Which is why we hate QR codes.
Yep. So Ben Jackson and I theorized about something like this many moons ago.
How is Ben? Have you talked to him recently?
I haven't talked to him recently.
We got to get him back on the show.
We theorized about something like this when we were talking about the document metadata stuff and the whole Twitter fiasco and so forth. And he said one of the things that we were working on was by putting barcodes in places to see who would scan the barcodes. And we got a website called getmore.info. So, hey, like, you want to go to Best Buy and you want to learn more about this Sony Vaio laptop, you scan this barcode here and it'll take you to getmore.info, and it will also steal a whole bunch of your cookies and gather some location data and because you can't tell where they go and they're evil.
That is, I could totally see that as an attack vector based on the scenario I described, right?
Yep, totally.
Because again, if it's not something you're like, I basically went through the toll or like I parked, I'm like, it's like often, hopefully most of the time it's an amount that you're like, I'm just going to pay it. So like I don't incur it. Because if you don't pay, you're just going to incur more fees. You're going to get a boot on your car. I mean, there's whole hacks on that whole thing. Have you seen the one that's a fake boot?
No.
What?
It's like, isn't it like is it inflatable, Mandy? Is it like an inflatable?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they won't boot your car twice. And we used to do this like in Providence, right? You would see people putting if you got a parking ticket, like you'd get one, you just never pay it. And every time you parked, you just put the same. But I think they're on to that now. I think they kind of realized that, and now they'll actually take the parking ticket off and like read it or scan it and kind of check it and be like, no, you're going to get another one.
Oh my God, you can buy a car boot for $20 on AliExpress.
Huh. There you go.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Interesting. The other one, Paul, that if we got one more second to cover one of mine real quick here.
No, I want to hear about hacking a VW Golf power steering ECU.
Okay. I mean, that's cool.
This is...
So I've been spending some time digging into automotive firmware. Go figure. I got something you can help me with. One because it's typically really hard to get a hold of because they don't publish that stuff. However, the tuner community, like if you can get a part number, they've probably pulled it from a device so that you can reprogram, because so many of the ECUs and the devices in your car that are connected to CAN bus and so forth are VIN locked. And when one of those goes bad, you need a new one. So you go and buy one from a junkyard, but it's VIN locked to another VIN and will never work properly.
Is that like Intel's boot guard?
Kind of. Maybe.
Kind of sounds similar.
So
actually.
there's a bunch of companies that have been able to recover the firmware from the ECUs and from all the devices, so they can reprogram the VIN, so they can change the VIN and reprogram it to your device so it will work with your car. I mean, this is huge in the luxury automobile stuff. I mean, I watch a bunch of those shows on YouTube where folks buy crash Lamborghinis and they fix them and so forth, and water damage, so you've got to get new ECUs because they've been under salt water and so forth. But as part of this was a pretty interesting story in that there was some hacking of the VW Golf power steering ECU because they wanted to be able to create effectively their own self-driving car.
There's an ECU for just the steering?
Yes. Because it controls the, so like,
it's like a whole,
if you have like the automatic park module.
I do. In my Tesla, I do.
It needs to, at least in the VW Golf, if you have the automatic park module, it needs to be able to parallel park. And in order to parallel park, it needs to be able to turn the steering.
It needs to control the steering.
Yes.
I got you.
And there's a computer module to control
and the ECU is
the steering.
The ECU is basically a microcontroller, Larry.
Yeah.
Right? That controls the car. Or portions of the car's functionality.
Or one component.
Interesting.
So...
Oh, dude, they make a universal car interface?
What do you mean?
Oh. This guy works for comma.ai. Comma.ai, if you read the article down below, it says you can use a Panda. I'm like, what the hell is a Panda? To move the to interrogate the ECU over CAN bus and everything else. It's an OBD2 a connector with a USB port, and it's a universal car interface. It supports CAN bus, LIN, GM, like that, and it charges your phone. What the hell?
Yep, and has a bunch of GPS maps and supports OpenPilot. And
wow, this article is amazing.
And it's $1,700.
Oh shit! Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking about buying one, but so yeah, this story is about how they went and tried to interface this with this particular $1,700 device. To go through the process of like, hey, maybe I can pull the firmware off of the ECU. Well, then I've got to find one, and they're kind of expensive. So he bought one from the used market and put it on his desk and tore it apart. And ooh,
holy crap!
Yep.
What did he? How did he? It looks like he had to melt a bunch of shit to get access to the.
Does
right? You're looking at this picture too.
Yep. Well,
I mean, halfway down, like it looks like he had a heat gun?
Yep. Well, I mean, if you think about it, these devices are likely chemically bonded, the two sides of the case together.
Right.
They are
plastic, not meant for maintenance.
They're plastic welded so that they can live under the hood of your car where water and dirt
Correct.
and all that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So, yeah. So, a bunch of diagnostics with CAN bus and so forth and so on.
I give like a lot of respect to hackers that write stuff in their blog post that says, since we don't know the exact microcontroller we're dealing with, dude, that's some serious hacking, right? Like just that sentence right there, like you're on some next level hacking adventure right there. Like that's a lot of respect.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. So yeah, I was in so the reason I ended up on this article was I was on the hunt for a bunch of firmware for a bunch of the body control and ECU modules and that type of stuff to do some analysis on, which are hard to come by unless you know where to look. And there's a whole bunch of folks that again do that reprogramming on the third party market. And if you have a part number, you can typically find the stock firmware to be able to reflash your modules and so forth, or for someone to be able to reflash the modules. And that was a treasure trove full of stuff depending on the manufacturer.
This is a great article, dude.
Yeah,
and it's one of four.
Vehicle hacking is crazy. So Tesla wants $2,000 for the performance upgrade for my car, for my Model Y, to take it from a 4.8 0 to 60 to a 4.2 0 to 60.
$2,000 per year or $2,000 one time?
One-time fee, $2,000. I am currently.
And would you own that, or would it go away if you sold the car?
That's why people poo-poo Tesla, dude. Because it doesn't. So like, I'm pretty sure. Oh, I can't remember the name of the guest. The name of the guest that like tells everyone not to buy a Tesla.
Yep.
Which I totally didn't take his advice, but he's totally correct in that. The reason that he's shaming Tesla is for the exact thing that you pointed out, Josh. If I were to sell my vehicle and transfer ownership, they would wipe out that upgrade and they would charge the new owner for that upgrade, from what I understand.
That's insane.
Yep.
That's insane.
Josh, I completely agree.
Now, they may have changed tack on that, but I do remember that was the case, and we had seen reported stories on it. We had a story on the show about it a while back.
The hacker in me goes, I want to hack that. But the morals and ethics in me goes, that's essentially theft. Like, super cool if I were to figure out how to do that. I'm like, well, that would be super cool. But I'm like, I would have to disclose that to Tesla. Like, I couldn't use that to steal from Tesla. And I want to put that as like a public service announcement to those of you thinking about shit like that. Like,
that's theft.
It's not cool. That's theft.
Now,
right? Like,
if you find a way, they do have a bug bounty program.
Correct. You could. I like where you're going with this, right?
So submit to the bug bounty.
My bug bounty. So, but yeah, short of that, I'm trying to figure out ways to like launder money and hide money so that I can pay for this without my wife noticing. So that's basically where I'm at right now.
Now, the bigger. So I saw this. We were shopping potentially for a Tesla, and I saw some of these things, and I'm like, do I really need 0.6 of a second?
So you do. So here's why. So our mutual friend KF is like, I'm like, dude, I'm on the fence with this. He's like, dude, that was the greatest thing I ever bought in my life. I'm like, what are you talking about?
0.2 of a second.
He's like, dude, that's what you need to be able to smoke anything that anyone pulls up next to you in your suburban like area that you live. I'm like, he's like, dude, it was the greatest $2,000 I ever spent in my life. I'm like, can you do like a conference call with my wife to explain that to her? Because she's not getting it from me. Like.
But Suburban's doing? Like,
No, like suburbia. Like what he was, like what Kevin was describing is now I've totally outed. Now you, if you're in the know, you know who I'm talking about. But what KF was describing was the YouTube channel that he has, where because you can record the video that comes off of your Tesla,
all the cameras. Yep.
And he just like smoking like your Subaru WRX that people have tweaked. It's all-wheel drive. It's 0 to 60 still does not compare to the 4.2 that you can get in a Model Y, or I think a 3.8 you get with a Model 3. Yep. Like nothing.
Oh, is that ludicrous mode?
No, ludicrous mode. So the way I understand it, my Model Y, right, is 4.8 from the factory 0 to 60, which is still like I saw someone describe the 500 horsepower muscle car they bought. There was a 5-second 0 to 60, and they were proud of that. I'm like, I bought one from Tesla, and I would beat you because the Tesla, from what I understand, is like no skill 0 to 60. You get like. I can be on the line. I can be on the line with no driving skill as long as there's nothing in front of me and I can hold the wheels straight.
As long as you can drive straight and mash the accelerator.
As long as I can drive straight, I push the accelerator all the way to the floor. I'm 0 to 60 at 4.8. Like not much skill involved at all. When I had my 6-speed Mini Cooper, there was a lot of skill involved to get the max like 0 to 60. Also, KF described like the manufacturers of sports cars, supercars will be like, this is the 0 to 60. But he's like, that's if the driver has skill and it's tuned like precisely, and you've gone into also the computer and like you've turned off traction control. Like there's stuff that you have to do, has to be tuned, and the driver has to have
under
skill.
ideal conditions by a professional driver.
Ideal conditions. It's, whatever they'll say 4.7. Right? Let's just say. And he's like, no, dude, totally smoking them. Right? So he's saying pay the $2,000, get the performance update. And then you go Model 3 is 3.8. Then I think your Model S with stock Model S is 2.8. And then I think your Model S Plaid is 1.8, 0 to 60,
Jesus
which
Christ.
I think is I believe, street legal fastest 0 to 60 car.
It's crazy.
Well, what I found interesting about driving a Tesla though is that, like when I had my Mini Cooper, like I had a souped up model, Cooper S, Mini Cooper. I did a lot of modifications to it. And I was talking to the guy at the dealership where I bought it, when I bring it for maintenance. Like it wanted to be driven fast. Mm-hmm. It was a 6-speed. You couldn't not drive it fast. Like that's just the way the car like demanded. If you drove it slow, it like wanted to stall out, and it was like it made what I described as like very sad noises, right? When you drove it slow. The thing about the electric vehicle is I can totally drive it like totally normal. Like I'm taking my kids to soccer practice, and I'm driving totally normal.
Soccer dad.
Yeah, soccer dad. Like most of my mileage is like taking my kids to play. Like it's not like begging to be driven like a sportier kind of car, right? With like I had a sport clutch in the whole thing, right? Like it wants to be driven fast. This is like not like that. But if I mash the accelerator down, it throws everyone back in the seat, and you're crazy fast.
Here's how you can do it. Hacker, right? Like
we get this is really social engineering.
In order to get the $2,000 upgrade, it's touching stuff in the on the touch screen in the car, right?
No, it's the app.
Oh, it's in the app.
It's in the app, yeah. You might be able to do it in the car, but you can do it in the app.
Okay, it's in the app, right? And the app is tied to your credit card number.
Correct.
So if you were to touch stuff in the app and it got ordered, it would populate your car and it would charge your credit card number, right?
Correct.
Do your kids ever touch your phone? They're about to.
Yes.
Maybe.
They're about to accidentally order the $2,000 upgrade on your phone.
Oh,
That would
you're
be
fucking
lying.
evil.
That would be lying, Larry. We're talking about morals and ethics. That would be lying.
You didn't lie. You didn't order it.
So I had to convince one of my kids to push the button so I can send my kid. That's essentially lying.
For the cost of a $3 ice cream, you could have a kid
I got
take
this
care of it for you.
I was going to say I got this fake Tesla app. You can go and like totally pretend that you're driving dad's Tesla with this app, and you can go and order. That would be lying. Okay, that'd
be lying. That'd be lying.
Okay, yep.
I'm going with Kevin said I should do it.
But honey, Kevin said I should.
Kevin said I should. So we totally should. Oh God! Huge shout out to KF and ICER. Right? They're just great people. We've had a lot of interactions with them recently.
Yes, very recently.
Hilarious ones. Someone said, "Dude, no one laughed at my comment." I said, "Someone said KF was the holding some of the security research together with Yarn by being the like community organizer of security researchers." And I said, "Yeah, it's really a close-knit community." I mean, come on. Josh gets right, man. That's funny, right?
I laughed on the inside.
I
did laugh on the inside when I read that.
I hate you.
We've had a lot
Hate
more
you so
discussion
bad.
of knitting tonight than I expected.
Right?
With the death metal knitting competitions and all this, yeah. And then going back to Larry's story, wasn't Panda that was discussed in here, was that the same thing from the SBOM story?
Was it? I don't know.
That was the name of the software package that was dissected in that SBOM. Yes, you're correct, Pandas.
Yes.
Right?
But not the same thing.
It's not the same thing, but it was just
a collision of names. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, interesting. My story from NSA about the Russian snake malware infestation returns a 400 now. Interesting. Weird. Literally a 400. That's all it returns is the number 400. So.
Guess we're not going to talk about that one.
Nope. In any case, what do you think, Paul?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and